Morning, everybody. Suzuki Roshi said, Suzuki Roshi is the guy on the wall here, okay? Our teacher, the Zen master. Oh, get that off, yeah. Okay. Suzuki Roshi said that we do Zazen to get rid of our selfishness. That we are sitting for that reason may be something that beginners haven't thought much about. It is, of course, an axiom of Buddhism that we suffer due to everything changing. The self very much included in this. However, nearly all people sort of believe instinctively in this self, and so do their best to protect it from change. One characteristic of self is selfishness, which is about putting oneself before others no matter what they want. A simple example of this might be taking the last piece of cake before someone else can get to it. My computer's dictionary has selfishness as, quote, lacking consideration for others, concerned chiefly with one's own personal benefit or pleasure. The selfishness that Suzuki Roshi is referring to is more about taking care of oneself alone. In a quote recently mentioned here about the self from the Genjo Koan, we have two new people here today. The Genjo Koan, the founder of our kind of Zen, our kind of Buddhism, of Zen Buddhism, was a Japanese man named Dogen Zenji, and this, of course, happened 900 years ago. But anyway, that's him, and so Dogen said, to carry the self forward and illuminate myriad things is delusion. Okay, I'm going to say that again here. To carry the self forward, here I am, I'm carrying myself forward, and to illuminate many things. I want this, I want that, I'd like to do this, like that, is delusion. This delusion might be replaced with selfishness. Both of these, that is delusion and selfishness, both are closely related to why we suffer through our connections with the self. Delusions operate in the service of the self, and selfishness is an attribute of the self. We might not think of selfishness as having anything to do with our opinions. We assume that our opinions belong to us, that is, to ourselves, whether they come from something we have already decided in the past or have been given to us by someone else, like a relative when we were children. Either way, our opinions are stuck, as it were, in our brain. When someone disagrees with one of our opinions, we may find ourselves arguing about it as if we were afraid of losing ourselves. Such a discussion might even lead us to thinking something like, my way or the highway, then. The result of selfishly holding on to our opinions is our closing ourselves off by ourselves without recognizing it. Only we are affected by our doing this, by closing ourselves off. What we may selfishly hold on to the most is getting our own way. Throughout the day, we want things to be just so, even simple things, such as what beverage we prefer to have for breakfast. If that is coffee, for example, we know exactly how we take it, whether we want it black or with milk or creamer or with sugar, or how much of the sugar, or whether or not the coffee is freshly brewed, or whether it is hot enough or too hot. In a restaurant, a wait person will ask about our preferences, and if they are not met, we may be tempted to complain. When Jane and I were in Japan, when getting exactly what one wants is nowhere as big an issue in Japan as it is here. When Jane and I were guests in houses in Japan, we were usually not asked about what we would like to drink and how we would like it. Something was just brought to us instead. It makes sense that omakase should be Japanese. It is a word now heard sometimes in restaurants, meaning leave it to the chef. Such simple preferences may not sound problematic, but we feel it is natural for us to have our desires fulfilled. And if they are not, we are apt to react negatively. We may not recognize that we live by, I want what I want when I want it, as the saying goes. But thinking like this can result in our getting upset. While little instances of not getting what we want or not getting rid of what we don't want can occur throughout a day, those that are taken seriously may cause us to be resentful or lose our temper or even leave us anxious or depressed. Ultimately, we are much affected by the limitations that we place on ourselves in living with the dictates of our self-centered desires. The truth is that we suffer from getting bogged down with such concerns. Moreover, they are what prevent us from experiencing our true nature, which of course is enlightenment. To be truly open to everything without such self-impositions is to see things as they are rather than as we want them to be. It is what it is a positive statement. If you are hungry, be hungry. If you are sick, be sick. In accepting our world in this way, we don't think that we should be anything else or anywhere else. Whatever is in front of us is enough. To be free like this is to be free from one's selfish self and to live life fully. When joy is there, be joyful. Thank you. Does anybody have any comments or questions? Here's Jane. There we go. Okay. Yes, Mark.
I have
I'm sorry. The two Marks again.
right.
Sorry.
Always a lot of marks.
Yeah, Mark Morris is first.
Oh, we have.
This is a real interesting time to be about self, because with social media now we have self and profile, and it's pretty complex and pretty scary actually. And I was just wondering, how do you navigate the the selves the so many selves that are required to be put out there?
Well, of course, as the country is becoming more aware of, is that the algorithms that decide what you like and then keep feeding you what you like. And also by not controlling what's on the social media sites, many people get hurt. And some people feel that it's their obligation to be as selfish as they possibly can be, and as negative as they possibly can be. And there's right now, there's not much answer for the problem. But, when we were children, the ones who are here today are kind of far from that. We were very interested in finding ourselves, having a good personality. I don't know if it's still exactly the same, but I assume that it is. And so in Buddhism is exactly the opposite. The most important thing in Buddhism is that there is a much larger being of ourselves. It's still the self, but that the one that we think of from the opposite point of view, the selfish self, is the one that gets us and keeps us in trouble. And as I mentioned in the talk, until we come to terms with this self, with not thinking that what we desire is heaven on earth, then, but treat our desires carefully. Of course, we will always desire, but what our actual self is, as you mentioned, Mark, is not very important, because we have a different self every moment. And when you study yourself, Buddhism is to study the self. And when you study the self, then you recognize what's been going on in your life. And so Buddhism says that there is no self, yet there is one. My talk today was about more close to the beginning of Buddhism, when we still feel very strongly about the self. You never change being who you are, but you change clinging to being who you are. And that makes a very, very big difference. Who you are is something that's much nicer that you yourself may even think of yourself as. Or it may be the opposite. You may have a big idea of self, and you won't be happy until you begin to start giving up on it. Mark?
We actually have
Yes.
3 marks. They're both marks.
Oh, you marked those?
So we have 3 marks today.
3 marks today. Oh my goodness.
Oh,
I can make a joke about how many marks I have today. Yeah.
Yes, we're all equals here in Sendo.
Anyway, so Mark Middlebrook.
I was wondering if, Mark, were you happy with that answer that he gave you? I was just, okay. I think it changes my whole, what I was gonna say, what you brought up, Mark. It's really quite amazing. The self, I was listening to a neuroscientist just the other day about how many cells we have. There's so many cells. They determine that scientifically. It's not just in philosophy or in just psychology today. It's known. We have many different personalities, and they're constantly jiving each other for who's in charge. We tend to have an idea. In fact, this might be why scientists are having a hard time defining what is consciousness. This cannot be really scientifically determined, and yet we all see our consciousness. We all recognize this, and it might be because there's an amalgam of selves that live within us, and conscious selves, and I think the conscious mind is a very narrow bandwidth of what we have, very narrow. With all the brain studies, they're determining how things actually work. They're able to really see inside our heads and know when we are going to make certain decisions and things such as that. It's really become rather science fiction like. So where does that bring us? Well, which self is the self that we are? I think that's been the thing that is the kind of the bottom of this topic is that. And then how does that all work? Well, if we have so many selves, how do we round them all up? Well, I believe rounding them up has to do a lot with meditation, because we're quieting these different selves of us and allowing them to interact silently and effortlessly. And so we actually create this wholeness of it. I had a friend, the thing I was going to start with, I had a friend, he's no longer with us. He was always saying, what was it? I want a life with the absence of choice. That's what he kept saying. And yet every time he turned around, he was always constantly deciding, always constantly working towards the perfect choice, the perfect way to spend whatever choice that was. And it never ended until he ended up in prison and ended up, now he's deceased. Rather a sad story. And he had many opportunities for no choice, for absence. And then he finally found it basically in prison. So I guess he got what he was after all. That's another story. I feel that when I sit, that we're first wrestling with often the ego, our decision-making process, finding what's the best in our mind to do, how to be, what's the best thoughts to have in our head while we're sitting. All these things are ourselves. All these things are what we're trying to handle. And I think the way that we really do see these selves is when we allow that self to come forward that's detached from all the selves, the one that sits there and watches us as we think, that watches how we behave, watches and feels how things interrelate with reality, and exactly the moment is where everything I think exists. Where I'm going with this, I don't even know, but it feels like it's what we do is very, very important, not only to just us, but to the rest of the world, because the selves that are displayed now are, like you said, they're avaricious, they're violent, they're selfish, they're destructive. We see that before we understand and see the let's say the golden thoughts. I mean, this pushes aside all the subtleties and all the feelings and all the other emotional things that we have as ourselves into a very, very disturbing picture of humanity.
Yeah, and so, but if you, of course, take the opposite route of that the modern self that you're talking about, then ultimately these problems all disappear.
How so? How does this work?
It works. It works because things are what they are, and we are what we are, or who we are. Not even who counts funny. I think I like what better. We are what we are, and everything else falls away.
It's true, they're falling away.
And there's no longer anything. You ultimately, you all of a sudden it comes to you that you are actually don't care for all the things that you once cared about. You like having it this way or that way, and there are thousands of those things. We don't recognize them, but they're endless actually. And suddenly you realize, I don't care about that anymore. I don't care about how this is that way. Because you are still you, but you no longer are attached to being you.
As comes with the freedom from choice.
And freedom from choice.
Freedom
Yes.
from choice, which is hardly ever used.
That's right. Freedom from choice. That's right. That's right.
I don't want to belabor this too much, but I feel we're on to something here with this, and it feels by not having choice and allowing, I'm finding this more and more over the last month, is that allowing is the way. Allowing is the way,
yes.
allowing everything, allowing anything, everything into the realm, but there's a freedom from choice.
Yeah.
And this freedom from choice is vast. It's very vast. And I think this is part of the trying to dissolve and break down our formations that we create of how we should live, how we should do, what should I buy, what should I eat, where to go, what's the best thing to do? I'll leave it at that.
Thank you, Mark. That's very, very, very nice. Yeah. Jane, anything? Are there any more questions or comments?
Do you want me to say something?
Yes, please.
Okay. Mark, I think of us as having not so many ideas of people inside us or feelings and ideas of selves. I think that we are beings of infinite choices. And so we also have all possibilities. So what we choose out of all these possibilities is what makes us who we are. So the choices are subtle or they're very obvious. It depends, like you can give up very obvious things in order to understand the subtle choices you're making. And I think maybe the idea is to just let most things pass as you let thoughts pass. And eventually in the peacefulness of your thinking or the quietness of your thinking, you might see something more real. I don't actually believe in golden thoughts, but I do understand how you're using it. You're saying it like looking for the golden thread in the haystack.
I think of how you paint, your paintings with a lot of gold.
Yeah, I love gold. Anyway, so I just think we do have an unlimited kind of choices, all possibilities. So the choices that we make are really important, not so much to make ourselves into something, but to avoid going down a path we really don't want to go down.
May I suggest something that's okay, that I have found lately by no thoughts, no choice, no actively creating, that everything happens as it does and as it is perfect.
Mm-hmm.
So even trying to be more, it is best to work on the positive side of all this, but to allow means we open up to even the most negative thought, and there's not a choice that I consciously am making. It's allowing the choices to rise and
See them.
And these are manifesting as we live the moment.
Yes, that's.
But when I say making choices with possibilities, I don't mean making only positive choices, because it's just making right choices. Like sometimes negative is a better choice in a situation, but just making what seems like a right choice, but one that doesn't lead you down a violent path or a negative path too much. Sorry, Peter.
That's okay. Thank you. I gotta get a little more light here in my screen. Let me say one thing quickly, is that we actually don't know who we are, and therefore we don't know how to face ourselves. And often we run from what we face. But in Buddhism, in Zen Buddhism, whatever is there, you don't flee it. Whatever is there is what's there, and you accept what's there. Rachel?
Thank you, Peter and Jane. It's pretty commonplace for people with babies, birth, death, catastrophe to say, I see what really matters. And able to make choices, even take actions that under ordinary circumstances, they had not even believed possible. Are you speaking of practice and awareness, being able to become the condition under which you don't require catastrophic shocks in order for one moment your self-interest to subside, so that an understanding that includes yourself but other people as well just becomes paramount? You don't have to work at it. You grasp what, even if you're wrong, but you grasp what will be a resource in a situation, a greater situation. But that with practice, for some at least, there can be an awareness where that can be even a daily, having a moment here and there, rather than, having it startle you out of the selfishness, where there really is something within you that is you and is everyone, and then it becomes self-evident. But it's not an interesting word. It's not self-evident under the lulling slumber of our regular days.
Thank you. Thank you, Rachel. Yeah. Anyone else like to help us out? Yes, Sandy. Oh, just Mike. Not yet. No.
She says go on. Right?
Hmm?
She's saying go. Are you saying go on? Wave your hand.
Well, Sandy, try diddling with your settings there and get it, and we'll let John speak first.
All right, let her pull off her headset.
Yeah. Oh, take up your headset, Mark says.
Unplug it.
Unplug your headset. Just pull it out, yeah. Now try. Unplug it, and now try. Just talk.
Oh, maybe we should move.
No, we have to, your mic's not on somehow. Either way. Okay, try again. Usually you get it. No, not right now though.
Go to John for that.
Oh yeah, I'm gonna jump to John. John?
Good morning, everyone. I just wanted to address what Mark Middlebrook had stated, because I can't more, Mark, because I feel your statement about choice and the removal of choice, or the practice towards trying to remove choice from your life, and just, to me, choice is what makes us human and makes us different from maybe every other living creature, or most other living creatures that run mostly just on instinct. And I think the heart of this gets to the heart of our practice, and that is clinging. It is not the choice that is the issue. It is our clinging to the choice that's the issue. It is not our self that's the issue. It is our clinging to the self that's the issue. Clinging is the entire crux of what ails us and what creates suffering for all of us. It's not the choice. It's not ourself. It's not this. It's not that. It's not all these other things. It's our desire to attach and our desire that is the issue. And I think the practice towards not clinging, not towards a desire for no choice, but rather a realization that whatever choice we make, and like James stated, which I thought
Yeah, he froze. Yeah.
Can you hear it, John? Well, let me,
solid choices. Did I cut out?
Yes, you did. You just came back. Yeah.
Anyways, all I was trying to get at is that, you know, it's really important that we realize that it's the clinging and not all this other extraneous stuff out there that is the issue. And that's really what should be the focus of our practice, is realizing that that's really the ailment. Thank you.
Thank you. Hmm?
who's waiting?
Okay, that's
Everybody thinks.
okay. Let's go. Let's go to the people who are on the screen.
I wanted.
Okay. All right.
Next name here.
Okay. All right.
Is that, no, I think you have just a little bit wrong, John. I am thinking to the idea that we should not cling, that we have no choice. It is allowing whatever. It's not a thing of decision making. It's your decision made through the process you're talking about. And I'm not advocating we change that just allow it. That makes it clear. That's, I just wanted to make sure that everyone understood that, because we could go into a big discussion.
Yeah, okay. Thank you, Mark. Yeah, yes, that is. Yes, that does make it clear. Yes. Yes, Spencer.
Yeah, this will be brief. So, I mean, is there anything emptier than thinking that the neurons in our head are who we are, our fixed self, or that an avatar or a profile is who we are? I mean, it's our attachment to these things that's our delusion. And, you know, it's funny that we talk about them like they're tangible, but, you know, it just seems like there's nothing more ephemeral or amorphous than these things.
Thank you. That's very true. Yes, Sandy.
When we came to the Zendo, we made a promise to follow the Bodhisattva path. And following that path dedicates our lives to others. And when one dedicates one's life to other beings, there isn't space left, you know, to be selfish. So as you open yourself up to others and help them from the small self that wants this or wants that, and allows you to detach from that, and to lead a much happier and fulfilling life. So that's just kind of how I see it. That's been my experience, to refocus, you know, because I remember I was very selfish when I was younger, and I was brought up to be that way. And it's definitely wasn't a good way to be. My life was miserable. And now that I practice Buddhism, I can see that I created all that misery in my life. So you know, other than major things happening out of my control. But I think that the biggest thing and best thing one can do is not only study themselves, but to study their interaction with other people, and, you know, to focus on others and other things than always focusing on this little mind going around, oh, I want that, I want that. It's got to be that one. I want that model, you know, and that's what makes the world a happier place. So
No,
that's
thank,
my 2 cents.
yeah, no, thank you, Cindy. That was a very necessary addition to the conversation. Yeah, that was very nice. Okay, I think we're doing the full moon ceremony.